Hello. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Chapter 7 and how it relates to the Hockaday case study. And question 1 asks, according to the text, what are the major leadership issues in the Hockaday case? Overall, I didn't find there to be too many leadership issues necessarily that stood out to me. There were some issues overall, but I think that the strategies and styles implemented in leadership and management overall were pretty effective. If I were to point out some issues that could be seen, I think that they would probably stem from trust issues because of the way that they're set up, being virtual teams in geographically diverse locations. Section 7.6 talks about types of distrust, and one of those specifically was discussing how it can occur from less favorable crisis management. And I feel like this specifically ties to Hockaday because once there was an issue that occurred and a crisis arose, and although the crisis didn't necessarily turn out unfavorable, it could have been handled better and more efficiently and been solved quicker. So I think because this issue was less favorable than expected, it caused issues for the team, meaning Francois ends up quitting. I believe one of them doesn't want to be in a leadership position anymore. I think that this kind of just is because they're not really comfortable in that position just due to the way the groups are set up, the way that the groups are formed throughout the company. Also, although Francois wasn't a huge leader, I think that he did have a leadership position in his group, and he did reflect negative behaviors. This kind of, I believe, ties back to more of Chapter 6, but I think that it related enough to bring up once again. Negative behaviors obviously are issues in leadership because if you have a negative attitude, it's easy for your subordinates to get that same attitude and whatnot. Okay, and then question 2, how would the text describe the leadership approaches Jill and her senior team use? First of all, I would describe the leadership style as being mostly democratic. From the very beginning, Jill was quick to ask her most direct managers, I believe they were, what they felt would be the best solution. She gave her ideas, but she wanted to make sure that it worked for them and that they felt it would be successful for the company. In a way, you could say that they kind of acted in a laissez-faire leadership way, just because it was a self-managing group style, so really they were leading themselves with came from a direct leadership. Sorry, I'm trying to think of my words to say. It comes from a higher position, the decision does, and they have to follow it, but they also have some leeway in how they do it on their own time, if that makes sense. In terms of management, referring to the Blake and Moyton, I believe, managerial grid. Sorry if I misspoke on that. I would place Hockaday in the categories of middle-of-the-road management, but also leaning towards task management, because I feel them being democratic, that they do care about the needs and wants of their employees, and they want to meet these, what would make their employees happy. This could be seen when they have the meeting towards the end of the case study, when I believe they review how the groups are going and take suggestions on how to improve it in the future. So it shows that they do care about how their employees feel, and they're not just going to do what they want without hearing a little bit of their input. They all are a little bit more kind of task management, though, because just the structure of the organization. It's very goal driven, very task oriented, I would say. And for question 3, using course concepts, identify positive leadership in the case. I feel like there's a lot of examples of positive leadership demonstrated in the Hockaday case study, and if tying it into the text, section 7.3.4 talks about super leadership, which I believe that can be somewhat seen in the case study. It wasn't emphasized, but like I said, they were self-managing teams, and super leadership means the act of leading others to lead themselves. So essentially, Jill would lead them in the right direction, give them specific goals, but the Hockaday responders' organizational structure wanted them to be able to lead themselves. So it was built, they were trained to lead themselves from the get-go, to be able to handle problem solving on themselves, know how to effectively communicate with their co-workers and the clients. This also, Jill establishes goals. They are enhancing their self-efficiency by being managing, and there's a vision established. And these are specific traits of super leadership as well. Also, they demonstrate talk in interaction, which is just discussed in section 7.3.5 in the text. Hockaday often conversed. They always had to converse with their co-workers and clients. Being virtual, this was the only way they would be able to communicate at all. They had to work with groups often, and especially in times of crisis. If the concept of conversing and just communicating effectively is really emphasized in this organization specifically, I feel, probably more than some other organizations. Also, the text is quoted to say that maturity is the primary factor that determines an effective leadership style. And besides maybe little details of the case study, like Francois's outburst towards the end, I would say that the overall maturity level of the workers of the company is high. They were able to do their jobs and do them efficiently. And now to question 4, what would our author say are opportunities for leadership improvements? I would say mostly just because I feel that Jill did play a pretty good, she fulfilled her position as a leader successfully, I would say. Maybe a technique that she could use would be the concept of empowerment. It's not a very interpersonal, relationship-based organization, as I've kind of discussed. So she's not really able to just be super inspirational and super personal and super empowering to each individual. They're all over the country and other countries, so that is a difficult task for a leader in that position. And question 5 kind of ties into this, I think. Using the ideas presented in chapter 7, what should Jill consider? She should consider empowerment, I believe, just new strategies to maybe not her directly, but her most direct managers doing things that empower their team members in some way. And maybe the text always also mentions charisma, and it doesn't talk about Jill's personality. I assume that she's friendly and easy to get along with, but maybe if she had that extra factor of, wow, she's this great person to work for, and I'm able to communicate with Jill, and we have a strong, not strong, but we have an established relationship in some way, that might be a great benefit for the company. I'm not sure if they necessarily need it, just because it's not really that type of organization that would need a relationship structure like that, but it works for a lot of organizations, so it could possibly work in this situation as well, I believe. And I think that wraps up the questions for chapter 7. All right.